To order. I'm going to advise those in the public gallery that they're welcome to use mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode and all devices are muted. It's not permitted to take photographs or record any part of the meeting. So I'm going to officially welcome Daniel McCrossan to the committee, as Patsy McGlone has moved to the Justice Committee, and we also welcome Glenn Docherty to the committee team. Welcome to both of you. Our members agreed to write a letter of thanks to Patsy for all his work on the committee. Cheers. Fantastic. Yep. Okay, thank you. Okay. Agenda item 1 then is apologies. So we have 2 members joining via Zoom. That is Daniel McCrossan and Anya Murphy. Anya, can you hear us okay?
I can, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Anya. Okay.
No apologies.
No apologies that we're aware of. Okay. Declarations of interest. Remind members of your responsibility to declare any interest in any of the items under discussion today. Does any member have any interest to declare in relation to any of today's agenda items?
I'll declare an interest in a partner in a farm business.
Thank you, William.
It was last year executive of a small farm and owner of a small farm.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, I do the same.
Okay.
Small farm holding.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. Agenda item 3, Chairperson's business. Members are referred to page 6 of the pack for a brief note of the informal meeting on the 22nd of July with Timmy Dooley, Minister of State for Fisheries and the Marine Environment. Unfortunately, I was unavailable. However, several members were able to attend, and discussions covered a range of issues of common interest, such as combating climate change, protecting biodiversity and fishing. Anyone any comments to make? Are you content to note? Thank you, members. Item number 2, referred to page 8 of the pact, an invitation from the Northern Ireland Chamber of Commerce to attend the annual Renewable Gas Conference on the 23rd of October at the Titanic Hotel Belfast. I've been invited in my capacity as an MLA to attend a panel discussion on the role of biomethane in the decarbonisation of the energy network. As the conference will discuss issues of interest to the committee, they've also offered to host our meeting to facilitate members' attendance at the conference. So members, I would be keen that we do hold our meeting there on that date. The Chamber of Commerce have advised that the timetable for the conference will accommodate the committee. So, have you any comments? Are you content that the clerk proceeds to organise that meeting at that location? Content? Yep, thank you, members. Item number 3, referred to pages 9 to 10 of the pact, correspondence from Diana Armstrong, MLA, dated 21st of August, regarding farmers' concerns for the future of agri-environment support. Members, the concern is that the current EFS group projects are due to end without a clear plan that advisory support will continue under the new Farming with Nature Landscapes package. Farmers are requesting that the support provided through the EFS group projects should continue in the new Farming with Nature packages. Despite the advantages of nature-friendly farming, it will only work if farmers are supported with robust agri-environment schemes and ecological support. Have members any comments you content to note? Thank you, members. Item number 4, refer you to page 11 of the pack for correspondence from the Speaker dated the 7th of July regarding the line of public petition in Assembly on the 30th of June entitled Stop the Nutrients Action Programme. Have you any comments? Are you content to note? Content to note. Thank you. Item number 5, refer you to page 12 to 42 of the pack for correspondence dated the 10th of July, which is a briefing paper from the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission regarding the environment, human rights and the Windsor Framework. The briefing sets out its advice and recommendations and has been published alongside an independent research report, which is also included in the correspondence. Does anybody anything to note or to say? Are you content to note? Content to note. Thank you. Item number 6, referred to page 43 of the pack for correspondence dated. Sorry, Anya, you had your hand up there. Sorry, I see you've your hand raised there. Do you need to go back on anything?
Yes, Chair. Just in relation to the correspondence that my constituency colleague Diana has sent in. I'm not sure, Janice, if I had flagged that as well. Look, I suppose it's a declaration of interest. Somewhat, it's an ongoing constituency issue. I assume Diana has written to the Minister, as I have done. We've yet to receive a response, but I'm just wondering, Chair, have any other members received these lobbies? Because I'm assuming that it's an issue that is countrywide rather than confined to one county.
Yeah, I've received just a small number, but I think there's obviously there's parts of the country which are much more affected, and that's maybe why there's a heavier lobbying. Is any other members any points to make on this?
I received some too, but I was expecting to receive more.
Yes. Great. Thank you. Thanks for that, Anya. Yeah, William had received a couple as well, so probably expecting more.
Could we possibly write to the department? I know obviously we've written in a constituency capacity, but I think I had sent correspondence or an email on the 21st of August, and I still haven't received a response back. If we could put a push on it at a committee level.
Yeah, happy to do that. Anya, members content with that approach? Yeah. Okay, we can reflect that the number of us have received those lobby emails as well and try and solicit a response. Anya, thank you very much for that. Sorry if it wasn't passed.
Chair, we also have later in Chair's business a letter from the RSPB on similar matters.
Okay, you get that, Anya?
Yeah.
Okay, super. Okay, thank you guys. Okay, item number 6 then, refer you to page 43 of the pack for correspondence dated the 18th of August from the Department regarding the DAERA business plan 25-26. A copy of the plan starts at page 45 of your pack. The plan outlines the key commitments for the year ahead. It's aligned with the programme for government will assist in delivering the DAERA corporate plan 25-27 and the theme, which is towards 2050, delivering a net zero, nature positive future, supporting sustainable agriculture and thriving rural communities. Do members wish to request a briefing from officials on the business plan and how it links to the PFG? Imagine you do. Yes. No dissent. Okay. And would it be useful to request that any departmental policy briefings going forward clearly highlight the links to the business plan and the PFG? Help us. I'm sure the department are joining the dots, and that's what we'll be interested in. Any further comments on that you can tend to note? Those two actions. Yep. Thank you. Number 7, refer to page 72 of the pack for an invitation on behalf of Enva Limited for the committee to receive a briefing and tour of its new fridge recycling facility in Tunbridge, which we're told has the capacity to recycle all the available fridges in Northern Ireland and indeed on the island of Ireland. Have you any comments, or are you content that we add Enva to our list of potential visits? Thank you. Thank you, John. Item number 8, I refer you to page 73-75 of the pack to correspondence from the RSPB NI dated the 17th of August. RSPB request to brief the committee regarding its concern for the future of agri-environment support. They are concerned that AFS higher level agreements are now expiring, leaving farmers unsupported due to the absence of a replacement scheme. And this is what Anya was alluding to, the clerk and also Diana Armstrong. So if you have any comments, are you content that we add the RSPB to our list of briefings on the matter? Excellent, thank you very much. Item number 9, I refer you to page 76 to 78 of the pack, the draft committee letter to Ms Kelly Armstrong, MLA Chair of the Committee for Procedures, requesting that Procedures considers a review of the LCM process as a priority. We requested before recess that the clerk prepare this draft letter. As you're aware, we raised concerns during our scrutiny of the LCMs in the previous session, in particular the Animal Welfare Bill, and highlighted the need for improved scrutiny time and resources in this process. Have you any comments? Are you content with the letter as drafted? I also have to note that I am a member of the Committee for Procedures as well. Okay, members, thank you very much. Item number 10, referred to page 79 to 84 of the pack for correspondence dated the 1st of September from Northern Ireland Environment Link, calling for an independent analysis of the economic impacts of the NAP proposals. As you know, the committee team are underway with planning for our NAP stakeholder event, and we will cover that later in our forward work plan. Have you any comments on the economic activity impacts as highlighted in this letter? Okay. Item number 11. Before we move on to item number 11, Daniel, can you hear us? You're online with us. Just want to check with Anya to make sure she could hear. You picking us up?
Yes, Chair, I can hear loud and clear. The video doesn't seem to be working, but I'll restart the computer once we get through these procedural bits at the start.
Brilliant. Good to have you on with us. Thank you, Daniel. Item number 11, members are referred to pages 3 to 4 of the table of papers to correspondence dated 9th of September from the Minister regarding his responsibilities in relation to the movement of animals to and from Northern Ireland. Members, as you're aware, under the Windsor Framework, certain areas are now subject to the direction and control of the Secretary of State for DAERA. Under Animal Health Law, issues of disease control sit under Minister Muir's responsibility, whilst the movement of animals, products of animal origin and germplasm into and out of Northern Ireland is subject to the direction and control of the DAERA Secretary of State. Having sought clarification around the issue, the Minister has been advised that he has direction and control over disease control measures within Northern Ireland, including measures taken with regards to animal movement to mitigate against disease spread, and measures under Part 7 of the AHL to restrict the movement of live animals, products of animal origin and germinal products in response to outbreaks of EU-listed and emerging diseases from Great Britain, EU member states and third countries. Do members have any comments? Are you content to note that? It's an important one at the moment because of disease outbreaks in Europe, and that's important for us to know that, and the Minister also to be aware of his powers. Members, the next 3 items relate to the Minister's oral statement delivered in plenary on Tuesday regarding North-South Ministerial Council meetings. Members, I refer you to pages 5 to 11 of the table of papers, the statement regarding environmental sectoral meetings on the 4th of July 2025. Any comments? Are you content to note? Thank you. Item number 13, refer you to pages 12-15 of table papers, the statement regarding aquaculture and marine sectoral meetings on the 4th of July. Do you have any comments? Are you content to note? Okay. Item number 14, refer you to pages 16 to 22 of the table papers, the statement regarding agricultural sectoral meeting on the 20th of June 2025. Any comments? You content to note? Number 15, refer you to page 23 of the table papers to notification regarding the Nip It in the Bud campaign run by the Farming Community Network in partnership with Macmillan Cancer Support. The UK-wide campaign encourages farmers and people living in rural communities to be aware of symptoms and, if necessary, get checked for early signs of cancer. They've asked us as elected representatives to support the campaign via social media and other methods to raise awareness and to encourage those who are concerned to seek medical advice. Members, any comments? Are you content to note and share the information? It's within your packs. It's very useful. Thank you, members. Agenda item 4 is the minutes of the meeting on the 3rd of July. Doesn't seem that long ago. I refer you to pages 86 to 95 of the pack to the draft minutes from our meeting on the 3rd of July. Any comments? And are you content with the minutes as drafted? And if you are, I will sign these and they will be published on the website. Okay, I'm going to sign it or I'll forget. And then Nick will have to remind me. Incredible date. Okay. Agenda item 5, matters arising. Item number 1, refer to the pack, page 97 to 100, for the response from the Minister to our letter sent on the 27th of June regarding the A5 Western Transport Corridor Scheme and the collaboration between DFI and DAERA in reviewing the High Court judgment and setting out the next steps. Minister Muir states they are working closely together to review the judgment and its implications, including in relation to the requirements of the Climate Change Act, environmental protection and impacts in relation to land previously used for agricultural activity. In response to our query regarding clear guidance for landowners and farmers along the A5 route, DFI and LPS officials have written to landowners setting out their plans to manage the process for reinstatement of the vested lands and have met with key stakeholders. Farmers impacted will then be contacted to set out the next steps. It says here that in relation to the restoration of the vested land, DFI, LPS are in discussion with agents on how to progress this. Have members any comments to make? I think the Minister has, maybe yesterday, Minister Muir has I haven't read the detail into it, but has made some sort of a move in that regard. I've seen some correspondence from landowners which makes it look still like the hokey cokey.
Yes, Chair, if I could come in whenever appropriate.
Just hold up, yeah. If you can you use your wee functions, Daniel, possibly at all? No, you got like a wee hand up thing if you can. So yeah, it's convoluted. That's what it looks like to me. Tom, you'd indicate it first.
Chair, yeah, the farmers have got some information, but it's been very, very limited what information they've got. Look, farmers were given 3 options whenever the court case stopped the works on the road. And those 3 options, know what they were. One was to let the land be as it was and the department would rent it off them, or to restore the land themselves and the department would pay them for it, or else the department would move in and they would restore the land for them. Now, a lot of the farmers realise this road's en route to come at some stage, perhaps down the line, and they were looking about, so a number of them were looking about letting the land stay as it was, and get the department, they were going to rent the ground off them. But the issue is that there's no further information through with regards to how much they're going to be getting for it if they rent it, how much they're going to be getting if they go to restore the land themselves, and all of this. And one or two of the farmers have said to me, look, we're losing a lot of land here, but we're prepared to let it sit if we know what we're going to be getting. But the issue is, they've said, look, our patience are running out here, because there's 18 years of uncertainty. They're still sitting not knowing what's going to be happening, and some of them are saying to me, is the road coming, is it not coming? We can see where the farmers are coming from. They can't get moving on to develop their farm business any further, and that's going on now for this number of years. So look, I think between the Agriculture Minister and the DFI Minister, there needs to be a collaboration together, coming forward with clear-cut clarification and information for the farmers on the A5. That's not happening, and that is causing a lot of concern. And as the farmers have said, there is their patience are running out. And you will remember the farmer that came in here, and he said to give evidence, and at that evidence session he did say, if the A5 didn't go this time, well then it would have to be scrapped completely. That's the way he was looking at it. But he's one of the ones who have said, look, my patience is running out here. I need to know exactly, I need clarity as to what's happening. And I think that's really what the majority of the farmers along the route are looking for. Give us some clarity as to really what is happening here. So, you know, I don't know where we'll go from here, for it seems to be so difficult to get clarity from the departments or from the ministers. But look, I'm not sure whether there's much point in writing to them again or not, or to see what clarity can be given to them, you know.
I'm just going to let Daniel in now, if that's okay. Daniel?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from what Tom said, yeah, there is a particular issue in terms of clear communication with landowners and farmers across the affected area, and that is unacceptable. I do note, though, that there has been more communication forthcoming from Minister Muir than there has from Minister Kimmins, and I found that in bits and pieces of correspondence over the last few weeks. I have to say, going forward, there isn't any clear picture here. I've had a number of letters back from both ministers just in the last few days, but they still don't outline the direction of travel for any of the affected stakeholders, be it landowners, families, people travelling on the road, businesses. So there is a particular issue here. I visited a number of farms in the last few weeks, some that are very badly affected. And Tom is right when he says that there is a deep frustration now bubbling from people that actually accepted that the road needs to go ahead and was in support of it and was cooperating with the department. But what they're telling me and other MLAs, I'm sure, is that the department is not communicating in a very clear way with them. The letters are often watery or weak and not clear in direction, and that is a particular issue. I have also put a Freedom of Information request into the DAERA Minister about the 13 meetings that took place between DFI and DAERA, and I put the FOI into both departments. They both exceeded the timescale. The information isn't forthcoming as to how we ended up in this situation to begin with, or how after so much activity around the particular issue that caused the judicial review to be successful against the department. So I think it's important, Chair, that we probably, in whatever appropriate way, ask the departments, this department in particular, relevant to this committee, to be communicating as clear as possible, because that is where the frustration is now bubbling. People would like to know what's happening.
Okay. Any other members? Anything you want to, points you want to make on this? Again, just for transparency, there's another piece of work ongoing at the moment for committee chairs, and that is about interdepartmental working. And I have, as a chair, have outlined the frustrations that this committee has found through its concurrent meeting with the Infrastructure Committee about the lack of cross-departmental work, and particularly on this project. It seemed to me to be the one that outlined that something where in Northern Ireland difficulties decades ago delivering major infrastructure like the A1, for instance, where lessons hadn't been learned, and the lack of information for those that would be affected in all senses is probably part of the problem. So, yes, Clark.
Chair, yes, I will be bringing a draft response letter next week from this committee to that AERC review. Mm-hmm. So I'll make sure that the issues regarding that particular project are laid out in that. So because this committee also will respond to that piece of work. So
if you're minded, then the committee, the comments that have been made and those that I've offered this week in a meeting with Mary, that we will bring a letter forward next week just in terms of our response to this piece and agree going forward, if that's okay.
Yeah, Chair, I think we do need to keep the pressure on here, because, you know, I requested a meeting with the Minister, the DFI Minister, albeit, and took 6 weeks for a response, but the answer was no. And that was actually on the A5 to see could we get any clarity for the farming community. So, you know, we do need to keep some pressure on some way or another in order to get answers for the farmers. That's all we're looking for. The farmers want clarity. So let the departments or the minister step up to the mark here and give the clarity that's required. That's all they're asking for.
Okay, and Tom, have you got a little one here?
I'm just going to say, it's been a farmer myself. I feel for the farmers in that situation. They're totally left in limbo. For me, it looks to me like both departments doesn't know themselves what they're doing. That's why they can't give you a response. But I think pressure needs to be kept on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, members. Clerk, do you?
Chair, just to note that yes, in that response that we got back, they've said they're looking through the judgment collaboratively. Yeah. So Unless,
they're not sure which way to go.
yeah, unless.
Well, after 18 years, sorry, how long does it take them then to collaborate? You know, that's the problem.
John Blair?
Yeah, Chair, very quickly, it's helpful that Tom clarified there in his latter comments about the correspondence he had, whether it was replied to or not, with the infrastructure minister. So I think I need to be clear. If we're writing to a minister or on what basically the draft letter that's coming to us will be and to whom, colleagues have colleagues of their own on the appropriate committee to liaise with the infrastructure committee. I'm assuming also that that's being done. But in terms of the responsibilities of this committee and the fact that it states clearly here the restoration of vested land is a matter for DFI, I don't think anybody's trying to suggest otherwise. Then I probably need to know what we're writing about and why it's going to the DAERA minister and not via whatever process to the infrastructure minister.
So the letter that will be brought forward next week is a response to the query by the AERC, where this has been picked out as an issue from meetings that we had with the concurrent meetings, the lack of collaboration, but things have moved on since the court has intervened, and the conversation now has moved on to the point where there's further communications with landowners, and it doesn't outline any solutions. Basically, to me, it seems to shift the problem. You decide what you want to do now, but there's no answer to, well, what do I get, or what support will I get, or what's this going to look like? So there's a number of views have been captured in that at this point, and I think we need committee agreement before we move on beyond the letter that we've been asked to submit for AERC. But I think Tom's point is absolutely right, where this committee has a role to play in this, to keep the pressure up. Infrastructure have the absolute responsibility for delivering the road. We have the responsibility for the rural impact and those that are affected by it, I suppose. And it was to me, it was the lack of collaboration. And I would agree with Daniel. I wouldn't blame the DAERA minister in this behalf, because we were asking the infrastructure departmental officials what have they sought in terms of the rural impact, and it was far from satisfactory. Michelle?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose maybe just to move it on, obviously Minister Muir has asked his officials to apply for an intervention to be part of that case, so it might be useful for us maybe to contact the Minister to get more information in relation to that aspect of it. But also, given the work, the joint work that we've done with the other committee, I think given the progress or lack of over the summer, perhaps maybe to write to the committee just to maybe outline some of the frustrations that have been voiced here today, to maybe get some, maybe look at another opportunity, maybe to have a joint discussion with them, with officials.
So I do think it would be hypocritical of us as a committee to look at two departments and say lack of cross-department work and us not do it with the other committee too. I think so. If anything that we do in this, in regard, if we are serious about it, we're going to have to ensure that we deliver on that cross-committee work, if you like, and as you pointed out, Michelle. Are members content with that? And then we'll come back to the draft letters next week. And on Michelle's point of the letter to the Minister based on his instruction to do the intervention with Minister Cummins, asking for clarity around
the other committee.
Just clarity.
Clarity about what it's, the representatives. Members can. Daniel, could you take your hand down? And by the way,
I'll put it up again, Chair, because I'd like to come in briefly.
All right, now Daniel led previous with you in the Education Committee, so you have to keep it brief. Go ahead.
Chair, just to follow on from the frustration shared by members, one of the biggest criticisms of the departments in the executive is the silo working that exists. And ultimately, from being in the court on the day that the judgment was read out, the biggest criticism by Justice McAlinden was that the departments really, in truth, failed to consult appropriately on particular issues, which ultimately left this project in jeopardy and has left everybody in the state of limbo that it's in. All we're trying to establish basically is, and it will answer a lot of questions for this committee in terms of how well did the two departments collaborate, because originally in a letter written to Patsy McGlone MLA, the Department for Infrastructure said that both departments met 7 times. But following that, it turns out that they'd actually met 13 times. And that is quite an extensive amount of meetings on 1 or 2 particular areas, which ultimately were the reasons for the judicial review being successful against the department. As I've said, I've written an FOI now to the department, both of them, because they haven't been forthcoming on the information in relation to those collaborations or whatever happened. But I think it is a real point of frustration. We're not getting that information. And I think this committee does have a responsibility to seek that out, because ultimately the failings by the Department for Infrastructure is affecting the work of this committee as the DAERA committee in representing the various aspects within the remit of the committee, so specifically the A5. So I think it's important that we seek a way out in relation to that. Of course, there was a simple potential legal solution to the problem, and that was hinted at in the court, that the Department for Infrastructure probably should have sought a stay on the quashing orders immediately after the judgment, because it was always going to be interpreted, Chair, that the department should, in the public interest, appeal a decision that wasn't favourable for the A5. The appropriate way forward would have been for DFI and the Minister to seek a stay on the quashing orders. That didn't happen, and as a result now we've hokey cokey going on, because lands were vested originally, now they're divested. In the event of a successful appeal, they're going to be revested. So any wonder landowners are frustrated. This is an outrageous approach to how these departments are operating or working. There's a lack of common sense in relation to it, and certainly at the heart of it, very poor advice.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, members, I think the clerk has got an instruction there. The draft letter to ARC will reflect the comments made today in that. Thank you for that, Daniel. Okay, members.
Chair, are you content that I go ahead as usual and draft a letter to the Minister just on the more general points without bringing it back next week?
Well, I think we have to keep the Minister. Yeah, the Minister has to be updated in terms of the deliberations of the committee. If
but you're content, I go ahead and...
It's not an instruction, it's the deliberations to capture the things that have been said. Okay, thank you. Okay, members, item number 2 referred to pages 101 to 104 for correspondence dated 24th of July from the Minister in response to our letter 3rd of July regarding NSERC's concerns in relation to the glass extended producer responsibility policy. The policy charges for the cost of collection and recycling based on weight rather than value, which makes glass more expensive than less sustainable alternatives such as plastics. The response states that the Minister has previously met with NSERC and will continue to engage with them, and has written to DEFRA regarding the potential impact of the small p EPR on local industry. The response also states that the final base EPR glass fees recently published have decreased by 20% compared to previous fees, and glass fees are significantly less per tonne than all other packaging materials. Glass is easier to recycle materials, such as glass will also be subject to lower fees from year 2. Members, the Minister recognises the importance of the availability of glass cullet, and DAERA are recently consulted on proposals to improve quality and quantity of that recycling. If any comments, are you content to note and forward to NSERC? Thank you, members. Item number 3 referred to page 105, 107 of correspondence dated 24th of July from the Department in response to our letter on the 3rd of July regarding the concerns of councils over their enforcement role in the Environmental Protection Single-Use Vape Amendment Regulations 2025. We've been considering the SR agenda item 9. The response states that the officials remain committed to find a solution. Confirmed a meeting with Solace, which scheduled for the 22nd of August, also states on the advice of the Departmental Solicitor that council's designation as authorised persons was an administrative easement if councils agreed to undertake an enforcement role. In the absence of any formal agreement, councils were not obliged to undertake enforcement responsibilities, and the Department remained the enforcing authority. In relation to the lack of confirmed additional funding, officials advised that it was not possible to estimate resource implications, as councils have not yet provided their cost assessments. Officials suggested that to assess requirements, councils could undertake the initial enforcement in the short term with a review in several months. Has any members any comments they want to make on that? No? Okay, content to note. Item number 4 refer you to the email correspondence from an individual dated the 28th of July on pages 112 to 117 of the packet regarding concerns in relation to the Craigmore Road landfill site. Members, we previously considered this matter the 19th to the 25th of June and then agreed to write to NIEA requesting detail of odour complaints received in relation to the site, details of any NIEA officers' odour assessment visits and details of the methodology used. We then considered NIEA's response on 3rd of July and agreed to forward it to the individual for information, and this is the response received from that individual. Have members any further comments? Are you content to note? Content to note. Members, when we reach the correspondence agenda item, we will be considering further similar items on waste and odour, and we can discuss it further then. Happy enough? Okay. Agenda item 6 is the Departmental oral evidence session, overview of the policy proposals for the Sustainable Farming Investment Scheme. Members, I refer you to the packet, pages 118 to 132 for the briefing paper, which provides an overview of proposals for the new scheme, which is being developed as part of the Sustainable Agriculture Programme. So, members, I now welcome the following officials from the Sustainable Agri-Food Developmental Division to the meeting and invite them to brief the committee. We have Ms Alison Chambers, Director, and we have Miss Brenda Cunning, the Future Investment Measures Policy Branch. So, thank you and welcome to our first sitting in the autumn of 2025. So I'm just going to invite you to brief the committee, and then if you're content, you take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity for us to be here to give an overview of the proposals for the new capital grant scheme. I'm going to give a very brief introduction, and then I'll pass over to Brenda, who will cover the key points of the paper for you. So we can leave lots of time for your question. We're really keen to take your comments at this stage ahead of the legislation coming to the committee in due course. And I would like to highlight just that the scheme proposals at this stage are still subject to business case approval and budget availability. So we're here to consider the first phase of policy development for the capital investment scheme under the Sustainable Agriculture Programme. Policy development has considered similar on-farm development investment schemes being taken forward in neighbouring jurisdictions, and we have engaged extensively with relevant stakeholders during policy development. So the capital investment support is being developed in two overlapping phases. Phase 1 from late this year will incentivise incremental investments from a specified list of equipment and technology, and aims to support investment across farm sectors and sizes, seeking to ensure that smaller farmers can be supported. Phase 2 from 2026-2027 will aim to support larger transformative investments, including emerging technologies, and this will be developed through engagement with industry and learning from ongoing initiatives and research in order to determine the most cost-effective measures for industry and for the public purse. So the Sustainable Farming Investment Scheme sits under Phase 1 and will seek to support a reduction in greenhouse gas, ammonia and nutrient losses, and we're working with the relevant teams across the department to ensure synergy of policy and avoid duplication of effort. We also envisage co-benefits for participants of the scheme in terms of increased innovation, increased efficiency, improved animal health and welfare, and or improved plant health. We're developing a very simple application process with the aim of having a quick turnaround of funding, and subject to uptake and budget availability, we would also aim to have 2 or 3 rounds of the scheme. So the business case is ongoing. We hope to have that finalised soon. Item specifications are being developed through engagement with suppliers on reference pricing, and we will be taking final policy proposals to the Minister following this session and further engagement with stakeholders. And I'll just pass over to Brenda now to take you quickly through the main points of the paper.
Thanks, Alison. Good morning, everybody. So yeah, just the quick run through the main points. So the development proposals, Alison's already said, we've engaged with stakeholders, directly with some sectors, with local banks, and we also undertook a survey with farm businesses back in 2023. We've considered lessons learnt from previous capital schemes here, but also in other jurisdictions, including the Farm Business Improvement Scheme, which was delivered under the RDP 2014-2020. In terms of scheme eligibility, the scheme will aim to support primary food producers, given the importance of agriculture and horticulture for food security in Northern Ireland and the challenges faced by the industry in terms of market volatility, performance and environmental impact. In terms of the eligible item list, we are taking a similar approach to FBIS Tier 1, which was to enable quick delivery of high volume of targeted investments. We've researched a wide range of equipment and technology, drawn from previous schemes, other jurisdictions, advice from CAFRE colleagues, suggestions from industry, and research and field trials of equipment. The paper sets out the benefits against which each item has been assessed and scored, and the diagram within the paper demonstrates how these benefits interact, with thanks to APSG for the suggestion of how to show this best. We've introduced the concept of MASMO, so that's the most appropriate specification to meet objectives. This means we will support the items which have been assessed as sufficient to deliver scheme outcomes. So that might not be the lowest or highest specification available. I'll just give a quick example. A manually operated crush, for example, with weighing equipment can help with livestock management and performance and has a knock-on impact to environmental impact and also business efficiency. A hydraulic option might be available but costs a lot more. So it does the same kind of thing but with a push of a button. A farm can choose to select that and self-fund the additional cost, but the scheme would only fund the MASMO reference price, that cost level. A manual crush would be available without weighing equipment, but that would not meet MASMO, as it wouldn't actually deliver any of the benefits we're looking for in terms of livestock performance, so it would be ineligible for support. So that's what we mean by MASMO, so we can discuss that a little bit further if you want. In terms of reference pricing, the paper sets out how reference pricing works and the rationale for using it. Reference pricing is used in other schemes in other jurisdictions, and we've used it previously as well, and it works well with the aim of high volume support delivered quickly. It also reduces the amount of effort required from applicants, suppliers, and from scheme delivery. For scoring, we are proposing a simple scoring system for this scheme based on the average of individual scores for items selected by the applicant. We're considering the option of scoring applications for low emission slurry spraying equipment, for example, by using applicant livestock numbers, so that funding will be prioritised towards achieving the biggest ammonia emission reduction. So we're still considering options around this. Maximum grant, we are proposing that the maximum grant amount of £25,000 applies across the whole scheme. So, for example, if a farm business received funding of £10,000 in round one, they could apply again for up to a further £15,000 in further rounds of the scheme. Penalty matrix, we've developed a range of penalties to discourage speculative applications and to ensure appropriate financial controls for the use of public money. The paper sets out the types of potential scheme breaches and proposed penalties, giving examples for each. I appreciate there is quite a lot of detail in that section. We want to ensure that the penalty matrix is explained clearly for applicants in the scheme guidance, and will seek to provide applicants with the opportunity to correct a breach where possible before a penalty is applied. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, if you would indicate just, okay, I've got a few names, so I've got a couple of questions. One that I hadn't pre-prepared, but I'm not going to name the company, if you like, but I'm looking at your scheme here, and it talks about animal health and welfare and in the tiers. So the first very basic question is, if an application hits one of those, is it compliant for the scheme, or has it hit a wider number of the selected items there?
Okay, so fundamentally every item has to have a benefit for environment and or carbon greenhouse gas reduction before it makes the scheme. But obviously then if something has an animal health and welfare benefit, it gets additional points for that, or if it's got an efficiency benefit or innovation, it gets. So the more pieces of the pie basically you have together, the higher the score for that item. And that's how we've assessed them. But it has to have environment and or carbon benefits.
And the pre-specified items, so are they clearly listed, and they have all? I mean, we've been to the ASPG, so therefore the ASPG will have had sight of the pre-specified items.
Not yet.
Or is that still in negotiation?
Yeah, no, they're still under development, because that's part of why we have to contact suppliers to see if those specifications actually even exist in Northern Ireland.
I don't know if so I'm trying to get my head around a very simplistic one. So I was at a place which did, so in terms of the slats for cattle, for instance, like a dimpled or grooved slat improves animal welfare because it keeps hooves cleaner. Happier animals produce less methane, I'm told. Is that the type of thing? Is this how we track it through from something which seems quite simple to, so animal welfare would be really important to a number of members in this, but if you can track that through in terms of their methane output and demonstrate that that is potentially something that would be of value, then
Yes, exactly. So for those slats, for example, so they reduce ammonia as well. That's the primary function of it. So you might think, well, that's the only benefit, but actually you're right. Animal health and welfare is improved. So that ticks that box. It's also good for health and safety as well. So the floor's kept cleaner too. And as you said, happy animals are more productive animals, therefore your carbon gets reduced as well. So that's how we're looking at each item. We're looking across the range of benefits to try and puzzle out what additional benefit might that actually have. It's not necessarily straightforward, it doesn't say it on the tin, but you can work that out.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. The briefing paper states that similar on-farm investment schemes have been taken forward with neighbouring jurisdictions. Has the department had any engagement with the other jurisdictions to assess what has worked, what hasn't worked, and make it as efficient as possible for farmers from Northern Ireland?
Yeah, we have actually. We've had quite a lot of engagement, in particular with DAERA and with DAFM in the south on their schemes. So they're bringing forward quite similar schemes. Scotland and Wales as well. We've had engagement with them, but primarily with DAERA and with DAFM in the south. As you say, lessons learnt from them and also from our own FBIS previously.
And I know you repeatedly, both of you have said that probably it's subject to the business case approval and obviously the finances being available. Will the scheme try to be as Obviously, it'll be as generous as it can be, but are the other schemes being used as a benchmark for what the awards might be?
In terms of the funding?
The funding, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So in Wales and Scotland and in England, the grant amount ranges from maximum of £15,000 up to £25,000 for similar schemes, slightly more in the south, but they do involve construction as well. So this is an items, equipment and technology scheme only. So yeah, we've benchmarked that, but also what we're able to do then is look at their equipment that they're funding, because sometimes novel things come on that we haven't necessarily had before. So we're looking to see what they've had, and we're also benchmarking them what kind of prices that they're setting for those items.
Okay, thank you. That's me. Declan?
Thank you for very much the presentation as well. So just to be clear, so will this be, you'll be bringing back information today, the final policy to the Minister following this, and will this then come in as negative resolution or will it be affirmative?
It's negative resolution, yeah, under the Agricultural Act 1949.
So given how important this is and the scale of it, why it's not been brought on by the affirmative resolution brought back into the Assembly for approval?
It's simply the legislative vehicle that we have available for us in order to deliver a grant scheme of this type. That's the type of resolution that goes alongside that scheme.
Do you see then by assigning a score and identifying equipment, what measures you have in place to prevent the cost of those equipment that are specified from increasing?
Yeah, that's actually why we're quite careful about releasing a list too soon, because we don't want suppliers then to start hiking up prices thinking there's going to be a grant scheme, let's put up the prices. So we're always very careful about what we release into the public before the scheme actually opens, and that's one of the reasons why we try to avoid price escalation that way. The other thing we try to avoid is having to narrow focus the scheme, because if you have just a very small number of items on a scheme, there's obviously heats up demand for those items, whereas we're wanting a broader approach. So we have items that will be applicable right across the board for all sectors, for all farm sizes, hopefully. So there should be enough the mix and match that it won't heat up the market that will increase price escalation.
And we are doing extensive pricing at the minute with suppliers for all of the items on the list. So we'll be looking at a range of prices across all of the items, reference pricing.
And just finally, Chair, thanks for your indulgence. You will be aware that this committee a number of years ago done the report into the role of women on farms. And I note that in the south of Ireland, the Targeted Agriculture Modernisation Scheme offers the 60% grant rate for female farmers to obviously incentivise them and recognise that they're underrepresented in the farming sector. And this is also the case here, where only 5% of farms has a female as the head of holding, but this scheme doesn't seem to have been targeted to try and incentivise or increase the role of women. Is that something that you might bring back to reconsider?
Because we're trying to keep this scheme as simple as possible for the applicants and for us to deliver, we don't want to build in too many other requirements. So the only requirement at the moment is that you are a food producer with Category 1 Business ID. Previously under FBIS we did target age, for example, or qualifications, but that required additional work for the applicants to do that. More fundamentally though, the scheme is about environmental improvement. We have to focus down on that, we have to have that focus. So yes, we absolutely want to bring in more women into farming, but this is not the mechanism to do it at this stage. Obviously something we'll be developing further. We're looking at capital investment support as a programme of support, as Alison referred to, phases of work. So that's something that's probably more appropriate for a next phase, as opposed to this scheme trying to deliver quickly, get it on the ground for farmers to get support now that they need.
Thank you, Declan.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. I have a number of questions. So have you a working assumption at the moment how much this tranche is likely to cost?
Yeah, we are working on a proposed estimate, now very much the estimate of £40 million that would be rolled out through this scheme over the next 2 to 3 rounds of the scheme.
And that's for a couple of rounds, that's not just for the first tranche?
No, not for
of
the
it?
first round, no, for the scheme in total.
And which funding stream will that money be coming from?
Well, we're bidding under the appropriate mechanisms to the centre for that funding. So we are. It's not coming from the earmarked budget.
Okay. And when is it likely to be launched? With a fair wind, when are you hoping?
With fair wind and all the approvals, we're hoping for a soft launch before the end of this calendar year.
Okay.
With a fair wind.
Okay, thank you. And obviously there's discussion within the paper around lessee applications and non-lessee. Will there be prioritisation or weighting given to lessee, or will there be a balanced approach?
Yes. So we're actually very keen that we make sure that we can give support for lessee. But obviously, if you mix and match different items, we wouldn't want an item with a lower score pulling down your application for lessee. So we are considering the ability to have separate letters of offer for lessee and for non-lessee equipment, so that somebody might want to apply for a lessee, but also might want something to do with cattle crush or whatever. If it's got a lower score, the averages won't bring it down. They'll be treated as separate applications. For the applicant, this will all be seamless. It will be the same application, but we want to see if we can pull them across so we can prioritise lessees separately, but also still give priority to those non-lessee items, which are still very important across the board.
Okay. And obviously what's being proposed at the minute isn't going to be transformational on farms. And I'm just curious as to whether future tranches there may be something developed which might be similar to the likes of Tier 2 of FBIS, which was transformational.
Yeah, that'll be the next
That's
phase of development.
Phase 2,
Yeah,
basically.
phase 2.
So for this scheme, it's going to be much more like Tier 1 of FBIS to run that out. And I would say that for some people, some of the grant support they're going to get will transform how they work on the farm. But I guess, the next thing is phase 2. That's more that transformational Tier 2 type approach that we want to develop. Because there's so many things going on at the minute, we want to make sure we're delivering the best outcome at that stage. So that's why it's going to be 26-27 before phase 2 begins.
And I suppose I asked that question really because I'm wondering then how you are going to target funding to those who perhaps need to make the greatest environmental improvements. And I'm not sure this scheme is necessarily going to do that.
Yeah, because it's quick and easy in a way, so it's not bespoke, it's not targeted. The only thing, as I said about the lessee, potentially we might rank that according to how much slurry you're producing, what your livestock units are. So that's the only aspect of it. But in a way, I suppose, because we're scoring the items and the items with the highest score, they deliver the biggest benefit. If people are selecting those, then that's where we're prioritising what gets funded.
Okay, no, thank you.
Can I just a very interesting question there at the end. In terms of communicating then with the farming community to get their interest, is there any preparation work that's being done? Because Michelle raises a really good point. Those that probably need to affect the biggest change, how do we ensure we attract them to the scheme?
Comms are a really big part of this, so they are, Chair, and there will be sort of pre-engagement before we go live and invite applications to the scheme.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks, Chair. Brenda, Alison, thank you both for the information. So far, some of the questions I was going to ask have been covered, but just to maybe try to clarify some information a bit further for me and colleagues. The aim of the proposed scheme, which would be focused on smaller farms, or at least trying to include smaller farms, is that part of a process to address the fact that on the simple issue of scale, quite often a smaller farm can miss out? I mean, it's a part of a natural process that a smaller farm will make less impact if they're making an improvement than a very large farm. So how will you address that in the context of the scheme?
Yeah, so hopefully by scoring the items as opposed to scoring the farm that's coming into the scheme. So that's where the focus is. So regardless of farm size, they still have the same shot at getting the items.
Yeah.
One of the things, though, we've done slightly differently, or we're proposing to do slightly differently, is we're looking to reduce the minimum investment amount, because that was something that small farms brought up before, was that perhaps it was that £5,000 for FBS was maybe a little bit too high for them. So we're looking at reducing that slightly.
Okay, that clarifies that for me, thank you. The second point then is, I think Michelle's question went some way to clarify on this. The current budgetary position, there is no current budget in place for this then. Is that the case? We're at business plan stage basically?
Yeah.
Okay, we're waiting approval from
We're waiting
finance?
approval for the business case, and then we bid for the finance over the next 3 years.
Okay, Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Aoife?
Thank you, and thanks for your presentation today. It's been very useful. My first question is just similar to John's. Just I know a lot of farms in the area that I represent, South Armagh, ANC areas and hilly areas, is not suitable for the lessing machinery. So have you taken into consideration the small marginal areas, and if so, how?
Okay, I suppose the suitability of lessee, that's a separate issue, I guess, and farmers themselves will know whether it's suitable for them or not to use that. But just in terms of hill farms, for example, in terms of what type of equipment might be there, one of the things we're looking at is, for example, virtual fencing, which could be beneficial to those types of marginal farms who can't afford or don't want to be putting in structured fencing, whereas they could use virtual fencing for cattle and in particular sheep on hills.
Okay. Grand. So, yeah, just moving on. So how will the Sustainable Farming Investment Scheme benefit the horticulture sector, given it is a competitive grant scheme and horticulture is low environmental impact compared to other areas of agriculture?
Yep. So I guess this comes back to when we're looking at the benefits. So we're not just looking at ammonia in terms of from livestock. You can look at some of the types of equipment for horticulture which also have a range of benefits. Things like sprayers, for example. So if you have a sprayer, it's a precision sprayer, it can improve air quality by reducing volatile organic chemicals. It can be better for carbon because it's reducing chemical use. And that's actually better for the farm business efficiency as well. You get better plant health, for example. So although it might seem like, oh, this is only going to be for livestock farms because it's the biggest impact, but there is an impact from horticulture farms as well, and there's things that can be done to address those as well. So what we've done when we've looked at the range of scoring for horticultural items, for arable items, we've looked to see are they kind of comparable so that they're not at the bottom of the list, and that is the case, that they are getting scores that are across the range, just like the livestock farm items would be.
Okay. So has any consideration been given to ring fencing a portion of the scheme for the development of the horticulture sector?
We have considered it, but we wouldn't be doing that, mainly because the horticulture sector is so small, and sometimes it's quite difficult to know what the interest will be at any particular time, so it would be quite difficult to do that. How much would be enough, or would it be too much if we ring fenced X, Y and Z? So we have considered it, but it's not something we would take forward at this stage.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anya.
Thank you, Chair. And look, folks, thank you very much for coming in to brief us this morning. I suppose just a point of clarity for myself in relation to the business case. You mentioned that it has been or is ongoing and has been forwarded to finance for sign off. Before the business case, before the SL is presented to us at committee, I'm assuming that formal sign off will be granted to the business case.
Business case is actually with our internal economists, so it hasn't been forwarded to finance yet for sign off. We're still working through that process with them.
Yeah. Okay, so by the time that the SL is formally presented to us, the business case will have received final sign off?
Not necessarily. No, as long as there's nothing really in the SR that would be particularly tricky in terms of the business case. We'd rather get the legislation in place if we could before we have the business case finalised. But the two will kind of go in parallel, and that's the process we've been taking, is to run everything in parallel. We would take that decision going, well, how far along are we towards the sign-off process? Is it okay to do the SR now? So that might impact our timeline slightly, but we don't have to have the business case signed off before we have the SR presented, or the SL1 presented to yourselves.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Anya. And William?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. Do pick up, you've yet to work out a list of items that are going to be available for candidates, isn't that right?
We have a list, and we've been refining that list. So we started off with quite a big list, and we've been chipping away at it, and that's what the process Alison referred to of engagement with suppliers, is kind of trying to refine that now. To make sure that the items are actually available, because some of the things we've looked at maybe aren't actually commercially available in Northern Ireland yet.
Maximum grant aid will be 20,000, is that right?
25,000.
25,000. So that's a spend of 60.
2,500 maximum spend.
I do see here, and I have no real issue with this, but I think a level of decommitment, there will be people penalised for that. I think it's very important that they realise that is made crystal clear, because some people can be a wee bit speculative, put on an item that they think they may need and may not claim for it, and then find out that they're penalised. So I think it's very vitally important that at the outset that's made very clear. There's levels of decommitment. What happens if someone puts an application in and doesn't claim anything? How do you penalise them?
That's okay. That's okay. You know, because the process is that people put an application in, those applications get assessed. We will then send out letters of offer. So if somebody gets a letter of offer and they think, do you know what, I'm not going to do that now, and they don't accept it, that's fine, that lapses. It's really only the ones who accept a letter of offer and then look like they're progressing, because they're obviously holding an amount of money, you know. So those are the ones that we really want to target to say, look, please don't decommit. Or if you have to, things change, just let us know, because that helps us manage the budget. Some people can see
the amount of grant aid, but they don't fully realise that the big outlay first. It's not all. Yeah. You know, they're still define 60% of the capital.
Absolutely, and that comes back to the whole idea of lots of engagement, really clear guidance all the way through the system.
Yeah, I think that's vitally important.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just, do you want to come in there at the end, Michelle, just before we move on?
Yes, that's fine. Obviously, Willie's just mentioned the issue around decommitment. I was going to ask, was that a particular problem in previous grants? And I also note you have paragraphs on the issue of retention and also false evidence. Has that been a trend in previous grants?
In terms of decommitment, thankfully under FBIS it was not, because they had a penalty matrix then, but the previous schemes of that, the Farm Modernisation Programme, it did have quite a significant level of decommitment. But the way FBIS was structured in terms of how the scoring worked and then the penalties, there was much less decommitment there, so it showed the penalty kind of worked. In terms of then retention period, there's not really been that much of a problem with it, but to be honest, we've maybe just not found it. But ultimately, you know, we do go out and do post-payment checks and stuff. I don't think there's been very many instances of that being a problem. False evidence, I can't really comment on that. I don't think it's been a big issue, but it can happen. So that's why we need to have the penalty in place for it.
It just mentions within the briefing on retention period that there will be retention inspections, and I was just curious as to, you know, the regularity of that, and obviously that will have to be costed within the overall scheme.
Yes. Also, we want to make sure that we're not putting too much onus on the applicant in terms of inspections or for ourselves, because that has a cost. So where possible, we'll do things like virtual inspections using perhaps geotag photos. We'll also try and tie in with if there's an inspection happening for another purpose, that there can be an inspection done for us as well. So we want to be very careful about that we're not overloading in terms of inspections.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, members, thank you very much.
Chair, just one issue there, sorry.
All right.
Is a 5-year retention enough? If somebody's buying something, they get a £25,000 grant for it in a sense, is a 5-year retention enough on that?
Well, actually, when we talked about this at APSG, it was raised that maybe 5 years was too long. So, you know, it's a kind of standard. We'd obviously hope that the investment is there longer, and a farm business investing that much money will want it to be there longer than that. But there's some of the types of equipment that perhaps 5 years is where you're at, or something else newer might come along that you will want to reinvest in. So that's why 5 years is kind of an optimum level.
And William with
William. In relation to farmers that have claimed for items in the past, will that be taken into consideration?
Only LESA. Only low emissions spreading equipment. So if we've provided grant funding 2 years ago under FBIS, we wouldn't be funding that again underneath this new scheme.
That's fine. Okay.
Thank you, William. Okay, thank you very much for your time and your presentation, and hopefully some of the questions that you answered eloquently today will help feed into your future work. So I'm sure we'll see you at the next one then.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, thank you, members. Okay, agenda item 7, and at the end of agenda, is it agenda item 7? Yep.
Yes.
Agenda item 7, at the end of agenda item 7, we're going to take a very, very short break, guys, okay, of no more than 5 minutes. Agenda item 7 is Research and Information Service Briefing on Aquaculture Overview, UK and Ireland. So members are referred to packet pages 134 to 154 for the briefing paper providing an overview of the scale of aquaculture and the support provided to the sector across the UK and Ireland. As you will recall, we commissioned RAISE to produce the paper following our briefing from Aquaculture NI. I now welcome Mark Allen from RAISE to the meeting and invite him to brief the committee. Good to see you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. And as you say, Chair, this paper had actually been shared with you, I think it was the 6th of June. So look, I will give you a short presentation. There's a couple of things that have changed, indeed even one this morning that I will update at the end. It's not in the paper, but it's probably just useful to provide a bit of context. So the terms of reference for the paper, as you alluded to, Chair, were to provide both an overview of the current state and value of aquaculture within the UK and Ireland, and to also look at those strategies, policy interventions that had a focus on growing aquaculture. And that was again UK and Ireland, and then I did a wee bit of a deeper dive into Northern Ireland specifically. Just again for the sake of clarity, aquaculture we're looking at here is broadly defined as the propagation and husbandry of aquatic plants, animals and other organisms for commercial, recreational and scientific purposes. And I suppose then just very early on in the paper, there's a bit of comparative data, which I suppose you can see there. For example, Table 1 on page 137, where possible, we use comparative data across the 5 jurisdictions. And that, I suppose, data really shows a couple of things. First, it shows that aquaculture is a significant industry in Northern Ireland at present in terms of the value of sales, about £14 million in the last data we had. And it does, I suppose, employ a relatively small number of people, but in the areas that that employment is, those are significant employers. And indeed, there's probably not too many sectors where 141 people would be turning over 14 million. So it's significant. I suppose we also have to acknowledge the fact that it is small. I mean, the juggernaut, I suppose, in UK and Ireland terms is Scotland, driven largely by salmon. And I suppose the GVA, or gross value added at basic prices, the approximate one for Scotland from aquaculture is 337 million, and it employs 2,300 people. 2,200 of those, I think, are full-time. So I suppose when we look at that, it's pertinent, I suppose, to consider what supports there are for this sector and this industry. And I suppose those could broadly be defined under policy and strategic direction and financial assistance. In terms of policy and strategic direction, the available data does suggest that England, Scotland and Ireland have more recent, specific and longer term strategies for the development of aquaculture as compared to Northern Ireland and Wales, and I have provided the overview of what those strategies and policies are on Table 2, which is pages 139 to 40. The closest thing that we in Northern Ireland have to those plans, and what I had looked at, appeared to be the Fishing and Seafood Development Plan, the FSDP, the final report of which was published in 2021, so about 4 years ago. I'll just quote a bit from that. At that time, where that report, the final report, included the following. For aquaculture to grow in Northern Ireland, current operators and prospective new developers need support. Those seeking to invest need assurances to reduce development risk, and this can be in the form of site identification, increasing certainty and timeliness of licensing, extraction, discharge, consent and planning permissions. Northern Ireland needs to be promoted as a region where aquaculture development can happen, and investment here makes commercial sense. And then they talked about a one-stop shop approach, but I suppose that was one of the key recommendations from that 2021 report. In terms of financial support for aquaculture, there are distinct differences between Ireland and the rest of the UK. Why is that? Well, for obvious reasons. Ireland remains in the EU and the Common Fisheries Policy, which operates on longer term funding, 6-year funding periods through the European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund. So I suppose we're not really comparing apples with apples in that regard, and that's important to look at, because post-Brexit and indeed post-2020, our funding for fisheries and aquaculture within the UK across all the jurisdictions tends to be on an annual basis. So you will have funding allocated to be spent within a year. There has been, I suppose, in recent, just actually in May of this year, the UK-wide Fishing and Coastal Growth Fund, which is £360 million over 12 years, or £30 million per year, could have potential to reverse that short-term funding trend. But at the time of writing, there was a paucity of information as to how it would be administered and whether aquaculture activities would be eligible for support. With more specific reference to Northern Ireland, in terms of policy, the development of aquaculture did feature explicitly within the first dedicated agri-food strategy, which was, as many of you will recall, Going for Growth, which was 2013. I'd actually forgotten it was that long ago, but that's when it was 2013. And there's a bit of an overview on that on pages 140 to 142 in your paper. I have to say, when part of the task you asked to look at was the current food strategy framework and associated action plan, those documents make no specific or explicit reference to the sector in terms of aquaculture. But in fairness, nor do they make any specific or explicit reference to any other agri-food sector. So it's not that aquaculture is an outlier, it's simply this is the common approach. Should also say that there obviously is, at that time I had written it, was being trailed as a forthcoming Northern Ireland Fisheries Bill. We know the title has changed slightly, but that would appear to have the potential to enhance local aquaculture development. But without policy proposals or a finalised bill, an accurate assessment of this potential was impossible at that time. And indeed, just to build on that, the Northern Ireland Executive has also, I suppose, within the last year published their Environmental Improvement Plan, and that included considerations relating to marine-based aquaculture. But at the time that I was writing, a number of key interlinked policies or strategies, such as the Green Growth Strategy and the Marine Plan, had yet to be finalised. So in terms of some potential issues for consideration, I think we have to recognise the fact that the Food Strategy Framework and Action Plan only run to 2027, the current Assembly mandate. So that does raise the question of, does DAERA have plans to develop more agri-food sector-specific action plans that will run beyond this Assembly mandate? And will any such plans include an aquaculture-specific one? Secondly, does DAERA have any plans to develop a specific long-term aquaculture strategy, similar to those that have been adopted in Scotland and Ireland? And that would tie in, I suppose, too, with maybe this idea of trying to provide a bit of clarity around the long-term direction and the funding environment. I suppose I flagged there, how has the FSDP report, the final report that was published in 2021, informed DAERA's thinking in terms of aquaculture policy and strategy? I think we've had some clues to that over the last couple of months, but I'll come on to that in a minute. Does DAERA have plans for a longer term funding or financial support package for the development of aquaculture? And has the department explored the potential for such an approach as part of the UK-wide Fishing and Coastal Growth Fund? It also raised that issue of how key is the forthcoming Fisheries Bill and its provisions to the development of aquaculture in Northern Ireland? And does DAERA envisage the bill completing its legislative process within the current Assembly mandate? And the final point I had raised at that time was, when will the Green Growth Strategy and Marine Plan be finalised or published? And how will they complement the Environmental Improvement Plan in relation to aquaculture development? So just to very quickly, 4 things to bring you up to date with that since the paper was published. Minister Muir did announce at the Balmoral show, I think he took the opportunity, or maybe just slightly after, to make the announcement for the funding programme for fisheries and aquaculture for this year. That's a 1-year programme again of total value of 3.25 million. I have to say the ministerial press release at the time does hint at some frustration around the fact that this is a 1-year budget, because he does go on to emphasise the fact that he wanted to encourage people in the sector to engage in conversations around almost strategic direction for the sectors. We also had then the Fisheries and Water Environment Bill. Their public consultation was actually closes today. That was open since July, and that included aquaculture proposals specifically around simplifying licensing arrangements, which was one of the major asks in the FSDP report in 2021. So, as I say, that would appear where I had posed the question, was DAERA informed? I think you could make a direct connection there. And the last 2 points, just literally this morning, DAERA have opened their consultation on the water quality policies to inform the development of the proposed Fisheries and Water Environment Bill. and that's actually open until the 6th of November. And the final one in July, the UK food strategy was published. Similar to our situation, no specific aquaculture provisions. The emphasis is very much that the UK document is there to complement the devolved administration food strategies and associated action plans. There's terminology like align and support, and it takes the same food systems approach as adopted here. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lord. There's a lot of detail in there and well covered and quite easy to understand. There's one that jumped out to me, and it was in and around the food strategy piece. So it seems to me to look like an omission, that it isn't covered in any specific way. There doesn't seem to be any direct correlations. Is that a missed opportunity, or do you suspect or expect that in subsequent publications that aquaculture will be picked up and evidenced?
I suppose, Chair, all I can say is what's in the public domain, and I suppose it's not that aquaculture has been picked upon. That criticism has been levelled by other sectors. As to whether DAERA or indeed the UK strategy reflect on that and maybe develop sector-specific action plans or proposals is above my pay grade at this point, but I think that would reflect probably a broader frustration that whilst the food systems approach is generally agreed, it's a great idea, it's building in sustainability to these considerations, there maybe needs to be a bit more meat on the bones as to what it means for different sectors.
Okay, and just one final one from me. I noticed in one of the recommendations from the Going for Growth, and particularly looking at the disaster we have in Lough Neagh, recommendation 106 was new opportunities should be explored to harness the resource of Lough Neagh for alternative aquaculture species. Unfortunately, we have an alternative aquaculture species in Lough Neagh called the zebra mussel. And Muss is suggesting that the government is responsible for zebra mussels, but no. There's the law of unintended consequences. Has there been? Did you see any analysis of the impact of anything from Going for Growth that either worked positively or negatively? And that one there, whilst on the face of it sounds like a good idea, can bring potentially disastrous.
No, and I suppose like all good plans, maybe they're only as good as the day they're written. But I think the invasive species issue is undoubtedly complicated matters there. And I suppose as Susie, my colleague and myself had, a previous paper we'd done that had been shared with this committee, the direct impact on the algal bloom from the water column being a lot clearer. There's a direct cause there. I suppose all I could really monitor in this one was the fact we did the department deliver and what it committed to in Going for Growth, and that's in Appendix 1. So for 106 you can see the effect we did consider, what they could do, and they set out to deliver a fisheries management plan for Lough Neagh and commission stock surveys and review fisheries legislation and methods. So those were marked green in 2014. I suppose the context in which that plan was made is very different to today. If it was being done today, I think it would be very hard to ignore both the impact of the invasive species on the food chain within the loch and what impact that might have on potential for other uses.
No problem. Okay, thank you very much for that. Declan?
Chair, thank you for that, Mark. I think that's remarkable. There's for an industry that employs 141 people, has 14 million sales. It's punching well above us with the scale of the industry. Mark, you mentioned salmon farming as one of the main industries. What other types of initiatives or industries would you have identified as part of your research?
I suppose, Declan, it's hard to get much beyond the detail with the stats, and I suppose that it was very much an overview, but I suppose we have fin fish, which includes salmon, and then we have shellfish. And the shellfish element is well established here, and the various species that we would have, whether it be mussels or whether it be oysters. But beyond that, I didn't go into in the paper, but if you want, I can have a look at maybe get a bit more detail on the individual enterprises or the scale, because I suppose one of the things to note on this too is aquaculture can be performed at different places. It can be at sea. I mean, our organic salmon farm off the North Antrim coast is one. You can have even aquaculture on land in tanks. So there is such a wide variety of approaches that can be taken. But no, look, if you want, I can look at that and try and provide more detail.
And I appreciate, obviously, Scotland has much bigger shoreline, so you'd expect the industry to be bigger there. Is there any most salient lessons that you might have picked up this Scotland do to promote the industry there that we could learn from?
I think they've obviously had a significant capital investment, but look, I think we equally have to acknowledge, and I remember even a number of years ago, under, you know, I think maybe even 2 or 3 mandates ago, salmon wasted is undoubtedly a commercial success. It's not, in many people's eyes, an environmental success. And that, I think, is one of the issues that Scotland continues to grapple with, is what is a sustainable level and form of salmon farming, particularly within sea locks. You know, in terms of, you know, there's been well documented investigation over the year in terms of, you know, whether it's food dyes, food colourings, in terms of meat, the use of effectively chemicals to deal with lice, you know, impacts on seabed. So it's I think really is supposed to bring us back to where we are. It's the likes of the Environmental Improvement Plan, the Green Growth Strategy. Those maybe provide, as if they deliver what it says in the tin, an opportunity to look at sustainable aquaculture. So while Scotland is undoubtedly flying high, how has it maybe got there would be one of the questions. And has it got there maybe to the detriment of the environment in some areas?
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Okay, next one is Daniel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for that very comprehensive overview. Obviously, there are very important points raised there. Just a couple of overarching questions. Where is Northern Ireland losing ground versus Scotland and the rest of the island of Ireland in terms of strategy, consenting or finance? And which single policy change would unlock the most growth here, in your opinion?
I think, Daniel, I think one of the major challenges, and I said earlier, I think the Minister alluded to in his own press release about the annual funding stream. That kind of takes away the fishing and aquaculture industry is supposed to plan strategically and to effectively try and factor maybe over a 5 or 10 year period what type of investment is required. I mean, when you compare to, and I know again we're comparing a European programme, I mean down south the 2021 to 27 EMFAF has a total budget of 258 million euro. You know, so when you put that in context, there are obviously opportunities there to grow aquaculture that maybe our local industry, with the levels of funding we're talking about, is probably going to be operating in a more constrained context.
Yeah, that is a huge figure.
I think I was going to just add the other thing I think that, and we don't have any clarity on, because I looked at it and there are numerous MPs asking questions in Westminster in this line, is as to how the Coastal Growth Fund will actually be effectively spent and how the money will be divvied up. And the government just simply alludes to we will consult with the devolved administrations. So we've no idea how that 30 million annual funding will actually be utilised, what share Northern Ireland will get, and what projects will be prioritised, because it is, whilst it might appear, I suppose, a huge figure, if you take for the whole UK £30 million per year, it's not a lot of money.
No, it's not. That's right. Just a further point, Chair, and thanks for that answer. Given the EMFAF in Ireland, what UK-wide or NI options could create multi-year certainty for our producers?
I suppose it'll, you know, just to build on my previous point, is it effectively a coastal growth fund or a spin-off from that, or is it simply equivalent? I think it's the Minister does, as I say, expresses frustration with an annual funding cycle, and I can understand that. You can't really plan, either as an administration or indeed businesses can't really plan on an annual basis when you're competing for funding.
Okay, some greater investment as well as the wider certainty.
Yeah, but I think the Minister alluded to the fact that, I say, those strategic conversations, I suppose it's probably naive to expect people to think strategically when they're looking at what am I going to apply for in 9 months' time. I suppose so. He did emphasise, I think, I mean, I can even, if you bear with me a minute, I'll quote you a line from the Minister's press release on the 29th of July. When this was announced, the 3.25 million annual support for this year, he said, I would encourage stakeholders to fully utilise the available funding to help develop longer-term strategic plans and proposals on key issues and priorities that could help shape the support offered through future funding schemes. And he explicitly mentions fish processing and aquaculture operations. So the Minister himself is aware of the fact there is a need for a strategic conversation and the space to have it.
Okay, that's very helpful. And a final point from me is...
Is your final, Daniel?
Yeah, top two regulatory bottlenecks Northern Ireland producers raise most often from the research you've done. What do you find is the two largest hurdles or bottlenecks?
I don't have that detail, Daniel, but I suppose I go back again to the FSDP report in 2021, which alluded to planning. And I suppose the planning and licensing, and I suppose those are issues that the department has consulted on in relation to their proposals for their forthcoming bill.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And John.
Chair, thanks. I suppose before we consider any of this, and thanks Mark for the presentation, the detail provided, that there are two things that we need to be pretty upfront about. First of all, not all of this is coastal. A significant proportion of our aquaculture sector would be based on or in or around our inland waters. And the second point, and directly relates to that, is it shouldn't really need explaining that there's a very clear link between water quality and aquaculture success. People will be aware of the Loch Ness situation, the impact of that in the catchment area, and in particular the lower Bann, where there is an aquaculture sector. I'm pleased that the committee, I think more than in the previous mandate, has done a bit of work to try and get aquaculture more openly discussed and higher up the agenda, and I look forward to seeing what work can be done between the sector through this committee with the Minister on that future planning and strategy where funding and growth might become available. What I'm keen to know, Mark, bearing in mind that it appears a 2013 programme called Going for Growth, which had a significant benefit for one part of a sector, but may have had an adverse impact on another through water quality. Does it come up anywhere in the research that in other jurisdictions that was done differently? The first question. And the second question is in relation to forward planning for the fisheries and bill that's coming forward and the marine plan that we're expecting to see. Are you aware of the aquaculture sector having given any clear steer on where governance of aquaculture might be looked at in those bills? I'm thinking of water abstraction, water management, and so on.
I think you're right to say it's a cross-cutting issue, but it wasn't something that I explicitly looked at comparing. I mean, I think it's a very specific thing I can look at in terms of how water quality was maybe considered in relation to other agri-food strategies. Was it a priority? Were environmental? I mean, it's probably going to be part of those wider environmental considerations. I can go and look at that, John, and see was there any specific within the 5 jurisdictions or the 4 outside ourselves. In terms of aquaculture sector governance, I suppose it sits within DAERA, but as to the future direction, I suppose there is a recognition again of responsibility for the factors to contribute. I mean, as I said, the environmental improvement plan, the green growth strategy, climate action plan, all of those effectively have responsibilities across the department and have common aims. So I suppose you could argue there's a more joined up approach being adopted in relation to the development of strategies. Maybe only slight frustration, as alluded to earlier, is the fact that we maybe don't have a lot of detail about what that means for individual strategies. Now, in fairness to the executive, maybe the approval and publication of the green growth strategy and others may maybe provide that clarity to be able to provide more detail. It's quite hard for me to make a judgment when I haven't seen them. But I think it's a different environment to 2013 in terms of some of the factors that seem to be, I suppose, being considered in relation to support for aquaculture and agriculture and other parts of the department's remit.
I'm happy enough with that, Mark. I'm not pushing for information that isn't there. I think this is something that we not only can look at as we see future strategies, specifically the fisheries bill, but we would have to look at the governance and the rate of growth of this sector compared to other sectors since 2013. All of that could be looked at in the context of any proposed future plans or bills. Thank you.
Good questions, John. I agree with all that. Aoife?
Yeah, just an actual quick question. Just in light, just with the research that you've looked, have they tapped into any shared island funding, given that they don't get European funding anymore?
Good question, Aoife, and again, wasn't in the remit, I suppose, but I can look and see if there have been any proposals that have been funded as well. So I'm happy to come back to you on that.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you.
Members, and if members are content, the clerk's going to liaise with Mark on the questions that were raised by members on this and further develop this and make sure we keep a focus on this, because it is important for a myriad of reasons. Okay, members, you content? I did allude that once we get this session finished, we're going to take a very strict 5-minute break, if that's okay. So I'll be starting at 11:34. So make sure you're back in your seats.
Of course you will.
Thank you. Thank you. Dilapidation Bill. Members are referred to pack for the following: Senior Assistant Clerk's Memo, Committee Stage Progress Update at page 156. We have the proposed bill timetable starting at page 158. We have the committee motion to extend the committee stage at page 160. The bill in the FM starting at page 161. And the draft media release reminding the public for the call for evidence starting at page 29 table papers. So members, the main issue today is to agree an extension date for a motion to extend. You'll see from the timetable that the end date for the committee stage is proposed as the 15th of May 2026. The rationale for the extension date is that at present the call for evidence is still open, so there is not yet a clear picture of all the issues or the number of groups who may wish to give oral evidence. In addition, we are aware that we may have several members' bills coming our way in the time period, plus our other business. The clerk has confirmed with the bill office that this extension date gives us the time we need, but as always, we will endeavour to move at pace. This is not a target. So please don't see it as a target. Given the number of issues raised at second stage, I'm content to agree the timetable on the understanding that we will endeavour to complete earlier, and that should be when we have given it due scrutiny and due process. We should be ready to move. So does anybody got any comments? Or are you content with the motion to extend? Yep. Thank you, members. Okay. And are you content with the draft media release? Yep.
I just ask, just as a query, how many responses we've had to date?
As of yesterday, 9 on citizen space. We've had 2 organisations say that they're going to come to provide oral evidence, but that's all we've received so far.
At that level, we could have this done very quickly.
Chair, we will be writing out to the organisations as we normally do anyway to encourage them to come.
Can I just encourage members to, especially on social media platforms, to share the committee's calls for evidence and stakeholder involvement. I've done it a couple of times, but please use your channels to do that. Really be appreciated. Okay, members. Agenda item 9 is the Environmental Protection Single-Use Vape Amendment Regulations on 2025. I refer to pages 202 to 209 of the Pact for the SL5 and the SR and the explanatory memorandum. We received no briefing on the 19th of June and heard that the Department intend to make the SR to provide it with the additional enforcement powers and ensure that the ban on single-use vapes is applied equitably in Northern Ireland. Members, you will recall that the committee previously approved the Environmental Protection Single-Use Vape Regulations Northern Ireland 2024, which came into operation on the 1st of June 2025. Several areas have been identified where the 2024 principal regulation could be strengthened to safeguard against illegal single-use vapes re-entering the marketplace. There have been no changes to policy content since the SL1 was submitted to the committee. The SR will be led before the committee under the negative resolution procedure and subject to executive approval will come into operation on the 29th of July. I just need to get this up myself, actually. Okay. Okay, members, we expressed concern to officials at local councils already advised of a lack of resources to implement the principal 2024 regulations and have earlier considered DAERA's response in matters arising. So, members, on the 19th of June, we agreed that the Department proceed to make the SR. So, I'm now going to put the question on the SR. That the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2025-126, the Environmental Protection Single-Use Vape Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2025, and has no objection to the rules subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules. Members, are you agreed? Agreed. Thank you, members. Agenda item 10 is SR 2025-141, the Eel Fishing Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2025. I refer you to pages 211 to 215. For the SL5 and the SR and the explanatory memorandum. I refer to pages 211 to 215 of the pack. We received an oral briefing at our meeting on 9th of June, heard that the Department intend to make the SR to promote more sustainable management of the Loch Ness eel fishery through 3 measures: revision of existing fishing seasons, providing a mechanism for DAERA to set catch limits on the brown and silver eel fisheries, and setting a maximum catch length. Members, you will recall that we were briefed by the Loch Ness Fishermen's Cooperative Society Limited at our meeting on the 22nd of May, when we heard that the high quality European eels in the loch have deteriorated, which led to the suspension of the commercial eel fishing, especially for this year. It's been in the news quite a bit. There have been no changes to policy content since the SL1 was submitted to the committee. The SR will be led before the Assembly under the negative resolution procedure and subject to executive approval. It's anticipated that it will come into operation on the 1st of January 2026. So members, on the 19th of June we agreed that the Department proceed to make the SR. I'll now put the question on the SR. The Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2025-141, the Eel Fishing Amendment Regulations, and has no objection to the rules subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules. Content? Thank you, members. Yep. Okay. Agenda item 11, Departmental Written Briefing, the NIEA Fees and Charges Inflationary Uplift 25-26. Referred to the briefing paper starting on page 217 of the pack, which includes a copy of the NIEA regulatory charging policy. Members, it states that there will be an increase in the NIEA regulatory fees and charges to ensure that chargeable activities are fully cost recovered in line with the requirements for managing public money. In Northern Ireland, 2025-2026, income projections show a shortfall of £750,000 between the cost of providing services and the income generated from fees because of increase in pay rates and employer national insurance contributions. To meet the full cost recovery, NIEA fees will increase by 6.19%. Have you any comments you can tend to note?
Yeah, Chair, but no difficulty, I suppose, with the increase, but we need to see a bit more movement from NIEA with regards to, work that they're doing on planning applications and issues like that, because there's a lot of delay and especially in planning applications, and therefore if they increase their fees as they're talking about, then we'd need to see a bit more movement on that front. And the applications been produced a bit more quicker than they are, because there's a lot of development been held back simply because it's so difficult to get an answer from NIEA. And it used to be that they could give you a target, a time frame as to when they could get it to you. Now they can't do that, and you're just and whenever you contact them, they can't give you any indication as to when a response will be forthcoming. So, yeah. No difficulty with the increasing of the fees, provided then that they're, that's followed up with a much more quicker and efficient response.
So I'm minded that we were in contact with NIEA, and it did affect in a number of changes within the department where they set out a couple of new units that they were developing and some new processes internally. So maybe it would be useful to write to them for an update on where those changes and transformation pieces are, because those were all to drive that efficiency that you're talking about, Tom.
I think there was an issue, Mr. Chairman, with staffing levels.
There was. Yeah.
And I think we got asked that question, has that been resolved? Because my colleague here is absolutely right. It's horrendous, the waiting time. And even planners themselves are complaining because they get only a bland response back. The same as we as representatives get a bland response saying that they're doing their best, but no guarantee when the result will be.
Probably I'd commend the committee for the work they've done on this so far, because it did affect some and enabled the NIEA to probably lobby the Minister in terms of monies to bring those efficiencies, which the Minister did respond to. So we'll look for an update on those issues, members, if you're content.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 12, Departmental Written Briefing, the NIEA Business Plan 2025-26. Refer to pages 229 to 231 of the pack, the briefing paper for the Business Plan 25-26, which outlines the plan's targets, including delivery linked to key ministerial priorities to address the ongoing threats to nature and water quality. And a copy of the plan starts at page 232. Members of the plan sets out 3 NIEA key priorities. Number 1, environmental regulation, protection and enforcement, ensuring regulatory activities to protect and enhance the environment. Number 2, water quality, tackling water quality challenges such as Loch Ness catchment and Moboy with enhanced enforcement and monitoring. And number 3, the nature recovery, redeveloping and delivering conservation plans for our most valuable habitats and supporting biodiversity. Members, the plan has a total of 17 targets, and progress will be measured by actions contained within 6 key performance targets. I'm going to go through those. Delivering recommendations from the Loughney report, safeguarding water quality and the environment at Moboy, progress towards ensuring that statutory planning consultation requests are responded to within 21 days, providing effective and efficient regulation and enforcement of drinking water supplies, managing over £8 million worth in environmental projects and schemes through the Environment Fund, and delivering an evaluation of Phase 1 of the operational review programme to drive effectiveness and outcomes. So you can see within those 6 key performance targets, there's one of the areas that we've just highlighted, and I know the committee will be interested in all 6 of those. Have you any comments, or are you content to note at this stage? Thank you, members. Agenda item 13, the Departmental written briefing, the Northern Ireland Food Animal Information System, NIFAIS. Stage 2 update. Members are referred to an update briefing on the NIFAIS project starting on page 261 of the pack. Members, this is a further update to the written briefing we considered at a meeting on the 3rd of April. To recap, NIFAIS is an IT project to replace in stages the legacy animal and public health system known as APHIS, used by Veterinary Service Animal Health Group, as well as the wider agri-food sector to deliver food traceability, disease control and public health functions. It will be unique across GB and Ireland, and no other EU country has a similar integrated system. Members, NIFAIS Stage 1 went live on September 2023 for bovine functionality, and APHIS has continued to operate alongside this, covering all other species. DAERA states that NIFAIS Stage 2 has been delivered by the supplier and is now going through final testing. The expected release date is the 6th of October 2025. Members, further development of the NIFAIS will continue regarding animal health law, and changes will be needed to deal with any revisions to the TB programme. So, members, we will be updated on progress and delivery of Stage 2 of the report, but I know that the Vice Chair has particular interest in this.
Yes, Chair. I think it is absolutely crucial that the Department communicates, particularly with March in relation to this. Because I know, like last year, for example, there was an electricity outage during the course of one weekend, and it caused a lot of issues at March. So I think it'd be really, really important that the Department rigorously communicates with March in particular to make sure that they have their alternative paper-based systems in place in preparation for this, because it's a Saturday, so there's a number of big march on the Saturday, so it would be important that that is rigorously communicated.
Absolutely, yeah. Totally. William, did you want to come in, or you?
No, I agree with the Deputy Chair on that issue. A lot of big sales on a Saturday, and it could create havoc if it wasn't, and if there wasn't a paper trail in place to deal with it.
That's very good, very good. Excellent, thank you very much. We will.
Can we just write to the Department?
We're going to write to the Department on that. Yeah, members content with that, we'll write to the Department to seek clarification that has been looked at and covered. Okay, excellent, thank you very much, members. Agenda item 14, correspondence. Today we're considering correspondence that arrived with the team during the summer recess. There's quite a bit. Number 1, referred to correspondence memo at page 267 of the pack. Items are listed in the memo in the order I'm going to go through them, rather than purely in order of dates. So, refer to page 270 of the pack, the correspondence dated 3rd July from DAERA regarding the consultation launch of the draft Round 4 Industry Noise Action Plan. The consultation closed on the 20th of August. Any members any comments to make? You content to note? Okay. Number 3, referred to pages 272 279 of the pack, the correspondence from DAERA regarding the EU Animal Health Law, equines. DAERA plans to implement mandatory registration of equine establishments, requiring them to obtain equine establishment numbers by the 1st of February 2026. Failure to do so will prevent an application for or updating of a horse passport, thereby preventing the purchase, sale, movement or export of horses. Stakeholder engagement took place during the summer, and officials believe it will be received as a positive step amongst the sector. Any comments to make? Or content to note? Content to note. Okay, next item, refer to pages 282 to 283 of the pack, correspondence dated 4th of July from DAERA regarding the launch of, on the 30th of June, of a small business research initiative on the sustainable utilisation of layer manure. Members, the SULM project is focused specifically on layer manure containing grit, which makes it hard to process through traditional anaerobic digestion plants. The competition has a total capital budget of £250,000 for phase 1 work, and it's anticipated that the 5 the highest scoring suppliers will be selected. Any comments? Are you content to note? Okay, thank you, members. Next item, referred to page 284, 285 of the pack, the correspondence dated 3rd July from the Department regarding publication of Northern Ireland Fisheries and Water and Environment Bill consultation, which ran from 3rd of July and closes today. And it focused on the policies affecting fisheries and aquaculture only. Water quality policy will be consulted upon excuse me, in the autumn. Members, we had a written briefing on the 8th of May on the consultation of what was then titled the Fisheries Bill. The title has now been changed to more accurately capture that scope. Pity we couldn't have done that for the Agriculture Bill, but anyway, maybe they are listening. Officials will provide a further briefing following the completion of analysis of responses received. The bill drafting period will commence in October 2025 with the view to introduce the bill to the Assembly in mid-2026. Any comments? Are you content to note? Content to note, thank you. Members, I refer you to pages 286 to 289 of the Pact, the correspondence dated the 18th of July from DAERA regarding its intention to launch a 16-week consultation on setting of the fourth carbon budget CB4 for the period 2038-2042. Carbon budgets 1 and 3 covering the period 2023 to 2037 come into operation on 12th of December 2024, and carbon budget 4 must set at least 12 years before the start of the period as laid down by the Climate Change Act 2022, which is the 31st of December 2025. The consultation seeks views on the annual average emissions reduction level advised by the UK Climate Committee, that's a CCC, of 77% for the period 2038 to 2042. The correspondence also has laid out the position in the rest of the UK and the Republic of Ireland. A report will be compiled following the completion of the consultation to be shared with the committee, and the draft regulations will follow in due course. Any comments, or are you content to note that at this stage? A challenge for all of us, but worth rising to the challenge. Next item, I refer to page 290 to 298 of the Pact, the correspondence dated 18th of July from DAERA regarding 2 UK emissions trading scheme scope expansion consultation responses. A summary of the policy positions made by the authority. Responses on both can be found Annex A. Members, the authority is proceeding with the integration of waste incineration, including energy from waste, into the UK ETS, initially through a monitoring, reporting and verification only period, which is an MRV only, from 2026, ahead of a full integration of the waste sector into the UK ETS. In this period, anticipation will be voluntary. DAERA has confirmed that the EU ETS will apply an NI for waste, incineration, energy from waste installations under the terms of the Windsor Framework. DAERA states that aligning the two schemes will minimise the risk of divergence, and therefore NI interest will continue to be considered in the design and implementation in the UK ETS. Members, regarding the main response to integrating GGR in the UK emissions trading scheme, DAERA states before full integration of GGRs, a further technical consultation is needed, and therefore no legislative amendments will be required at this stage. So members content to note. Any comments? Okay. Next item, I refer to page 229 to 307 of the Pact, correspondence dated the 18th of July from DAERA regarding the publication of the interim authority response to the UK emissions trading scheme, the ETS scope expansion maritime. Members, it has not yet been possible for the authority to finalise all the policy positions which are consulted upon due to its technical nature. However, the interim authority response on certain elements of policy that have been finalised will allow maritime operators time to prepare for the requirements of the UK ETS. That report will be provided to committee in due course. Any comments? Content to note. Thank you. Next item, referring to page 3 of the Pact, a memo dated 3rd of July from the Clerk to the Committee for the Economy regarding the Insolvency Amendment Bill. Call for evidence. The Bill and the FM are also in the Pact. The Economy Committee is seeking the views of all Assembly statutory committees before noon on the 30th of September. The bill will bring us into line with England and Wales, and the Clerk is being advised the Committee for the Economy wrote to the UFU as a potential stakeholder, notifying them of the bill during recess and received no response. Are you content to note the bill and respond from party positions on this? Yep. Thank you, members. Next item, refer to page 489 of the Pact, to a reminder that at Northern Ireland Assembly an Executive Review Committee's call for evidence for its review and cross-cutting executive strategies will close on the 30th of December. Members, we considered this at our meeting on the 3rd of June and agreed that the Clerk will bring a draft response to us in September. This will be in the Pact next week. And on Monday I met with CAMS as part of the CLG response, not this committee's response, the CLG's response. Are you content to note that, and we'll look at the draft letter next week? Thank you, members. I refer to page 495 of the Pact, to a memo dated 3rd of July from the Clerk to the Committee for Finance regarding budgets 26 to 29, 30 in the information gathering process. Members, it's a notification that the Department of Finance is seeking returns from all departments to inform the Executive's consideration of the budget 26-27, 29-30, setting the resource budgets for 26-27, 28-29, and capital budgets for 26-27 and 29-30. A draft budget is to be published in the autumn, followed by a 12-week consultation to allow a final budget to be agreed before the start of the financial year. Members, are you content to note? Yep, thank you, members. Okay, members, next item, I refer to page 511 of the Pact, a memo dated 3rd of July from the Clerk to the Committee for Finance regarding NI Fiscal Council Spending Review Assessment. The Committee agreed to forward to other committees correspondence from the Northern Ireland Fiscal Council dealing with the overall settlement for Northern Ireland, the NI premium methodology and the estimates in the premium spending review period, and other issues raised in the spending review process. So are you content to note? Any comments to make? Content to note, thank you. Members, I'm now going to refer you to several annual reports and accounts that have been led in the Business Office over recess. Starting on page 54 of the pack is DAERA's annual report and accounts for 24-25. Page 731 of the pack is the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board annual report and accounts 24-25. Page 822 of the pack is the Agri-Food Biosciences Institute annual report and accounts 24-25. Page 955 of the pack is the Forest Service annual report and accounts 24-25. Page 1061 of the pack is the Livestock and Meat Commission annual report and accounts for 24-25, and page 1164 of the pack is the Northern Ireland Environment Agency annual report and accounts. You can tend to note these reports and accounts. Are there any comments that you wish to be minuted at this point? As we have them in given evidence, I'm sure we'll take them back to them anyway. Members, I refer you to pages 1287 and 1313 of the pack for items of correspondence dated the 17th to the committee that have been copied into from the Chair of the House of Lords, Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee to DEFRA, providing further updates in certain matters within the scope of the Windsor Framework. Members, we considered and noted copied correspondence from DEFRA to the House of Lords Select Committee at our meeting on the 12th of June, and the House of Lords Committee has now provided responses relating to the following matters. Those are the proposal for a regulation of the European Parliament and of the Council on the welfare of dogs and cats and their traceability, rules on the appropriate measures to ensure the effective and safe use of veterinary medicinal products authorised and prescribed for oral administration via routes other than medicated feed and administered by the animal keeper to food producing animals, geographical indications for wine, spirits and agricultural products, as well as traditional specialities guaranteed on optional quality terms for agricultural products, and protection of animals during transport and related operations, certain market rules and sectoral support measures in the wine sector, and for aromatised wine products. Members, have you any comments? You can tend to note those. Content to note. Thank you, members. Next item referred to the Northern Ireland Fiscal Council Public Expenditure Data Bank, July 2025, starting at pages 1314 of your pack, providing the outturn data for the spending of executive departments and the overall financing and spending of the executive for its DEL spending. You can tend to note that, members.
Yep.
Thank you. Members, next item I refer you to the latest IASNI Delivery Tracking System Investment Activity Report, dated 27th of July, starting at page 1327. You can tend to note. Thank you. Next item referred to pages 131 to 133, 1331 to 1333 of the pack to correspondence dated all three. 20th of July from Cabra Concerned Residents Association to the NIEA regarding the biofilter maintenance at the Cabra site. Are you content to note? Members, we have had a considerable amount of correspondence over the past 5 to 6 months on waste and odour matters, and we are waiting for a raised paper on odour detection methods. The paper will be with us before the end of September, so I propose that we discuss the entire matter in a planning session in the near future after we receive that paper. Are you content to do so? And there's still a number of letters that we will refer to in that same vein. Okay, thank you, members. I refer to page 1334 of the pack to email correspondence from an individual dated 31st of July regarding safe bathing water in Northern Ireland and calling for DAERA to publish a community where swimmers can swim safely. The email has also been copied to DAERA and the Minister's Office. Are you content to note? Thank you, members. I refer to pages 1335 to 1352 of the pack to email correspondence from an individual dated 14th of August regarding public confidence in NIEA's handling of waste regulations in Northern Ireland. Lists complaints to NIEA concerning specific waste operators associated with Regen Waste Limited facilities, and copies of correspondence from the individual to NIEA are also included. Are you content to note? Members are referred to page 1353 to 1357 of the pack to correspondence dated 1st September from an individual to NIEA regarding concerns related to what's described as material non-compliance and regulatory failures at Warren Point Port. Any comments you content to note? Thank you. Next, I refer to pages 1358 to 1366 of the pack to correspondence dated 11th of August, 26th of August. The committee has been copied into from an individual to Crown State regarding concerns in relation to Dalradian Gold Limited. You content to note? Yep. Okay. Members refer to pages 1367 to 1502 of the pack to a chain of email correspondences dated 22nd of August that the committee have been copied into from an individual to the NIEA regarding concerns in relation to Dalradian Gold Limited. You content to note? Okay. Members refer to pages 1503 and 1511 of the pack to correspondence dated 26th of August that the committee have been copied into. Sorry, I should declare a wee bit of a, it's not necessarily an interest, but I was reported to the Standards Commissioner for visiting Dalradian. The Standards Commissioner found nothing of note in it and didn't make any recommendations. Okay, members refer to pages 1503 to 1511 of the pack to correspondence dated 26th of August. The committee have been copied into from an individual regarding freedom of information request to NIO in relation to Environmental Information Regulations 2004. You content to note. Thank you, members. Next item, I refer to pages 1512 to 1520 of the pack to further correspondence dated 27th of August from CCRA regarding biofilter maintenance works at Sawgrass. Are you content to note?
Yep.
Okay. Members, I refer to the next item, which is 15.21 to 15.32 of the Pact. The correspondence dated 30th of August from APB UK and a copy of its purported titled PRISM 2030 Programme Year 2 Report monitors how changes in farm practice can impact greenhouse gas emissions, explores how to make the red meat supply chain more sustainable. If you have any comments, you could happy to note. Thank you, members. I refer to pages 133 to 1608 of the Pact for the following items laid in the Business Office on the 16th of August: Greenhouse Gas Emissions Charging Scheme, Northern Ireland 2025. Northern Ireland UK Greenhouse Gas Emissions Trading Scheme Charging Scheme 2025. Pollution Prevention and Control Industrial Emissions NIEA Charging Scheme 2025. Fees and charges to recover the cost of processing discharge consent applications and monitoring of discharges to waterways. Underground Strata 2025 charging schemes and fees and charges to recover the cost of processing licence applications. You can tend to note those are in the library, links in your papers. Next item is page 1618 of the Pact, to an invitation from the Ulster University to the launch of the Imaginarium exhibition on Tuesday the 16th of September at W5 in Belfast. It will celebrate the visions of young people imagining a more hopeful and sustainable future, showcasing the creative work of young people from remote areas across Northern Ireland. Are you content to note?
Yep.
Members, we've gone through most of the items in the correspondence. Member, are there any other items you want to discuss? Or are you content? Thank you, members. Okay, agenda item 15 is the forward work programme. A forward work programme can be found in table papers starting at page 32. So, members, regarding the stakeholder NAP event that we agreed to hold, the clerk has been liaising with the Assembly engagement team over the summer. The earliest we can get a Thursday afternoon in the Long Gallery is the 15th of January, and it is now provisionally booked for that date. Engagement is now reviewing other external possibilities. If we wish to proceed earlier than that, we will, and we're going to circle back on this in the next couple of weeks regarding potential options for an external event. Do you agree that the forward work plan is published? Happy enough? Okay. Members, is there any other business? Yes, Deputy Chair.
Chair, I just want to take the opportunity to highlight the fact that we're on the second last day of the Rural Crime Week, and I think everyone here knows the impact of crime on rural communities, both domestic and also on farms. And whilst it has went down from last year, there are areas like our own area in West Rome, there does seem to have been a spate of thefts of livestock and machinery in recent times. This can have a devastating impact on rural communities and on those businesses as well. And I also want to just commend and draw attention to the good work of the Rural Crime Partnership as well. So I just think it's important that we use our platforms just to highlight that issue. It's a very, very serious issue, and encourage farm communities to look out, protect their own properties, but also look out for their neighbours as well, and report anything suspicious to the police at 101 or 999. And maybe in the future, if it's appropriate, we maybe could get an update or from the Rural Crime Partnership, on the good work that they're doing.
I totally agree with everything you said there, and given the pressures on police numbers at the moment, I mean, all of those areas that see the impact of crime, I mean, there's bound to be an impact there. That would be very useful to get an update on that rural aspect of that, and to try and work with them to. But your point about the vigilance of communities working together is very, very pertinent at the moment. So, very happy to do that. Members content with that? Yes. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Any other business, members? No. Okay. Date and time and place of next meeting. The next committee meeting is Thursday, the 18th of September 2025, in room 21 at 10 a.m. and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.